Mark Rogers TV on Rivalry Week, going to the Apple Cup with Washington hosting Washington State. We bring in Scott Brewster from KNWA, Fox 24, out on the West Coast. Scott, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great and look forward to this weekend and all the big matchups across the country. The Apple Cup's a special one. I think each rivalry has its own story, its own narrative that makes it unique and makes it special unto itself, regardless of the standing of the particular programs and the loftiness or the elitist status of those programs. And for the Apple Cup, it's pretty rare, at least based on my remembrance, and you can correct me here, when both teams are up. Both programs are up. We've got a couple of 9-2 top 15 teams that are 6-2 in the Pac-12. So it's got to be nice when both teams are playing at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, with all the schools, not only in the California region, but everywhere in the Pac-12 having to pay attention to this game because it's got such a huge importance for not only the Pac-12 North, but the Pac-12 championship game as well. Like you said, we've had some games where UW has been better, like the 2012 Apple Cup, where WSU, with a 2-9 team at that time, came back after they were down 28-10 in the fourth quarter and won that game in Pullman. So that was one of my personal favorite Apple Cups. But yeah, I think it's great. We had last year, both of them, they were it was quote unquote kind of a Pac-12 North semifinal game because they were both playing to see who was going to go to that Pac-12 championship game. So it's definitely nice to see that both teams are up, and I think it's going to be a fantastic game that we see on Saturday night.
And Scott, wasn't it just a few years back, I can't nail down the year, that there was a missed extra point that swung the game late in the game?
I believe so, yeah. That one was a pretty interesting game as well.
So we got Washington State, both teams at 9-2, 6-2 in the Pac-12, but we've got a situation, although it seems on the surface that they'd be playing for the North Division Championship, where it's all in Washington State's court. So if they win, they go to the Pac-12 Championship game to take on USC because of the head-to-head wins over Stanford and Washington. But for the Huskies, they're playing for Stanford. So if they defeat Washington State, Stanford has the head-to-head against Washington and breaks the two-team tie at the top of the North Division. So I got to think that this is the biggest game Washington State has seen, even though that these games are huge year to year, and Mike Leach has had some success since he took over and has really raised the bar there in Pullman, that this has got to be the biggest game in recent memory.
Yeah. I would say it's definitely one of the biggest games in recent memory. I would even maybe say the USC game this year in Pullman was just as big, maybe a little bit less because we're not playing or USC's not our in-state rival. But, that game was huge, and then this Apple Cup will be huge because UW will definitely want to be playing spoiler. I know Palo Alto, California, they'll be rooting for UW, but definitely Pullman and the east side of Washington, and me here in Arkansas and everywhere else, I'm going to be rooting for WSU because I want to see them clinch their first Pac-12 North title and then hopefully win that Pac-12 title for the first time since the early 2000s.